Hey everyone, welcome back to Taking Back Monday. I am so excited that you decided to say goodbye to the Sunday scaries and hello to a brand new future of work. My name is Alyssa Nolte,
I'm Kirstin Carey.
and we are going to have an incredible conversation. So let's jump right into it. What is your origin story?
This is a great question. So I'll tell you a story that will explain all of it in a very short period of time. So when I was 4, I grew up in the very stereotypical Irish Catholic Philly energy. And my dad, all of his brothers and sisters had boys and he had girls. So he raised us like we were boys. And at 4 years old, I was outside playing in the yard with my dad. He was throwing me this ball and I had his glove on. So it was bigger than me. I was teeny tiny. And he threw the ball at me, well, to me. Let's not say at me, to me. And I didn't catch it the way that you would assume a 4-year-old really can't catch. It hit me in the face and it split my lip open. And so my dad grabbed me and ran into the kitchen with me. My mom was, I guarantee, making a roast of the 5 things that she made. And she looked up and her firstborn is bleeding from the face. So she's upset. And she's like, oh my God, what happened? And I remember this like it just happened yesterday. And I'm in my 50s now. And my dad looked and said, look at her. She's not crying. And I remember thinking, Daddy's proud of me because I'm not crying. Now, I was probably still in shock. I'm bleeding from the face. He just got smacked in the face with a ball. But I remember that moment and I started processing. And from that point on, I was looking for proof and evidence that that's who I was supposed to be in the family, right? And there was a lot of celebration around when you're strong. And a lot of that was you don't talk about emotions, you suck it up, you walk it off. My dad got so excited if we could tell him a story after we came home from school about how something happened, but we sucked it up and we showed up, right, in the strength. From that point, I used to celebrate how good I was at in compartmentalizing emotion and being strong and what that looked like. And, big girls don't cry and that energy. And from that point, I think that is kind of a great example of what it was like to grow up in the 70s and 80s, what it's like to grow up as a girl in that like stereotypical male dominated energy, especially within families like that. My grandfather used to talk all the time about basically boys were better. And there was that energy. But on my mom's side of the family, we had that women empowered energy. My great aunts were 2 of the first women in the Navy as women.
Wow.
Like you hear stories on both sides, but it was so very dynamically different. So learning how to step up as an empowered woman versus stepping up as a girl trying to be a boy energy. And I know right now gender fluidity and all of that conversation, but there's a lot of energy around just feminine energy and masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
Not boy or girl, but what are you pulling from and what feels so balanced for you? And I think that's why I ended up where I am in business. And I have to do things my way that feels like it makes most sense to me. But I ended up with autoimmune conditions in my 30s. And I think a lot of it was because I was showing up, trying to be the thing I was told would make me strong and acceptable within the family. But then how do you show up as who you truly are in your most dynamic, balanced, true, authentic self and feel good about it and not apologetic? And so I think that's how I ended up in business in general. Later ended up as a health practitioner because I had to reverse my autoimmune conditions, couldn't find answers in traditional medicine. But I've always been in business leadership, in sales, in marketing, because I felt most comfortable there.
Yeah.
But for the longest time, especially now coming out of I am still Gen X, obviously, coming out of that 80s, 90s revolution, what does it look like to be an empowered woman within your own balance? And I think that conversation's happening for men and women and everyone in between now at a level that's very different. And how do you show up as your authentic self, period? So that should give you a little idea of who I am.
Yeah, I your story resonates because I talk to a lot of women on here, especially. I tend to attract, as a firstborn daughter, attract other firstborn daughters, right?
Hallelujah.
And we are who we are as people. I was just writing a LinkedIn post this morning about delegation specifically.
Her-
And a lot of people won't delegate because they're like, well, I can do it better, or I can do it faster. It's just faster if I do it. And that is not my problem with delegation. My I realized this a couple years ago. My problem is that I am the only one allowed to be a martyr. I'm the only one. I'm the only one who's allowed to work myself to the bone. Everyone else has to enjoy their jobs. Everyone else gets to work a comfy 30 to 42 hours a week. and I'm the only one who gets to do 70. And if I have them do these things, well, then they're going to have to work 40 hours instead of 32. And when I finally realized that my issue with delegation had nothing to do with my belief in my team and everything to do with my own like self martyrdom as a virtue, um, I realized that I was actually hurting them because they were thinking that I wasn't delegating because I didn't believe in them. And it's an entirely different mindset. And so, on their view, I was letting them down because I didn't believe in them. And in my view, I was doing something to protect them from becoming, the person who only works and is like bags under her eyes and like suffering
Mhm.
all the time. Right. So, we were both hurting and didn't even realize it was for the same core common, but different reasons.
Which is, I love that you bring that up because when I work with people in the sales process, that's actually a huge issue is that we're looking at our own stuff as the person in the sales position. And we're thinking we're trying to help the other person on the other side, but we overgive, we undersee them, we
Mhm.
don't recognize what's really going on because we're filtering and everything out through our nonsense and our things.
Right.
So coming back around and recognizing that when you're trying to protect someone from themselves, you're often hurting them. And people in the sales process sometimes won't ask the hard questions because they're uncomfortable or they don't want to make the other person uncomfortable. Part of our job in business is actually to create a discomfort situation because that's the only thing that makes somebody change from where they are now to where they want to go is something that doesn't feel comfortable. Otherwise, they're just going to stay in the comfort, stay in whatever nonsense they're in right now or whatever thing is not working for them. And they're asking you for help to get beyond that. You have to create positions of uncomfortableness, but in a safe way.
Right.
So as you are now learning that about yourself, you can have conversations with your team that says, how do we do this that we're uncomfortable in the best of ways to create resilience, to create growth, but do it where neither of us is stopping the other one from that growth process.
Right, and getting in the way. Like, you have to figure out how do you identify that tension, give it a name, right? Because it really didn't click for me until I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm just making myself a martyr for the sake of like, well, rub some dirt on it, get up and make it happen. You're the only
Yep.
one that can do it, and if you cry about it, well, then you're just weak." And I
Yep.
never ever wanna be seen as weak. I'm a badass, right? And
Mhm.
so this conversation, though, I think happens over and over and over again. And your opening story, your origin story really resonated with me for that reason because I too would I do that with my own kids sometimes. Like when my kid gets hit by a baseball in baseball and he like, gets up and shakes off, I'm like, "Yeah, buddy, way to go."
Nice.
And then when he gets hit with a baseball and he's, crying about it, I'm like, "Oh, it's not that bad. You're fine. You're fine." And like we have to figure out how do we recognize that it's okay to have a legitimate moment of hurt and reward the moving on from it, not reward the zero reaction to it.
Exactly. And then how do we reward the moment of hurt when it's emotional without over rewarding the moment of hurt as well? Because we
Yeah.
also don't want people to get into that space. How do we hold the moment, allow them to be whatever they are, make it okay, and then move past it? So, emotional,
Yeah.
physical, spiritual, whatever the hurt moment is, the body sees it the same way. Right. So, and then we manifest whatever that is going over time because we look at the people around us, especially up to the age of 7, and we look for how are we supposed to respond to this right now. We don't teach people how to look internally and say, this is how I want to respond right now. Because we're looking around these other people up to 7 to say, what will keep me safe? Because whatever they're telling me to respond with is what's going to keep me safe in this unit, in this tribe. And so most of our beliefs about who we are and who we're supposed to be show up by the time we're 7 or are enforced by the time we're 7. Then we just reinforce them over time with whatever our story becomes. So I love that you started with the story of origin because that's the story that we've created. And then we just try and make that true over and over. And then we don't see the proof or the evidence that makes it not true
Right.
unless
That
we're
that
watching.
confirmation bias, right? This fits my narrative, this doesn't fit my narrative, and how do I drive that forward?
100%. Yeah. And
So
that's how
tell
everything is done.
so tell us how do you take this into business? So we talked about, you as a 4-year-old all the way into now being someone in Gen X and leading, different organizations, different people for things. So tell us about your business and how does that origin story play into who you are today?
It's a great question. So I think the point in my 30s when I was finally diagnosed with celiac disease and Hashimoto's, which are two autoimmune conditions, that really put me on my ear because it forced me to stop the grind mentality. It forced me, like I physically couldn't keep going at the level I was. I couldn't keep telling the story of tough people, tough it out and they suck it up and they ignore the symptoms or ignore the signs or ignore the red flags. My body literally said, well, apparently you haven't been listening to me, so I'm going to shut you down. And then I wasn't getting what I thought were decent answers out of conventional medicine and even some of the natural medicine because it was just squash it more. Take this medication and dumb down the symptom or mute the symptom and keep going. But I still wasn't addressing the root issue. So I learned a lot when I became a practitioner. I took thousands of hours and years of training and then hundreds of clients to really learn how to reverse chronic illness and disease. And then I built, of course, because I'm a business owner, I built a 7-figure company in brick and mortar and then also online, helping people do the same thing for themselves. But the way I did it was, let's find out what your root issue is, emotional, mental, or physical. What started this internally for you? How did you continue to manifest it? And how did it show up the way that it did for you? Because it's different for each person. It's not one size fits all. And then how do we do this? And how do we then maintain that for you? And then help your family not end up in the same place too, because we continue to manifest that within generations and family lines. And then I realized that that's how I actually approach business. What's the root issue? What's the goal? What are we really trying to do? Let's dissolve where the problem originated, not what we think the problem is. How do we identify that? And how do we get to where we're going? So for me, it's always like, this is where I am now, wherever this is. This is where I want to be. Let's be clear about that. And then what's the bridge to get me there? And am I correct about where I am in life right now or business? And then how do I get outside feedback that has no attachment to my internal blocks? Because we all have the ability to set up defense mechanisms so we don't see our own stuff, right? We get in our own way. So you need someone that's on the outside who has no attachment to your nonsense internally. How do we get to see past that? So that's where I see consulting and coaching coming in, whether I'm the coach or whether somebody's trying to be a coach. And how do you help them understand who they are in that process for the client too? And then also, how do we make money doing it?
Right.
Legit, we want to pay the bills, right? We want to do this not because we just love it. And I do love what I do, but also then how do I make this into something that actually pays me?
Right.
Well,
What I like that you make that second distinction because I see a ton of people fall into the trap of like, if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. But the reality is we still have to work.
yeah,
And I still have to be able to make money. And it doesn't matter if I love it if no one is willing to pay for it. Right. I don't have generational wealth, so I can't just like sit on my yacht and do whatever I want to do.
me neither.
So we all have to like we
Me-
have to work, we have to have jobs, we got bills to pay. And it's okay to love what you do and make money doing it. But I
Yes.
think a lot of people forget the second part of and make money doing
Yeah.
it.
Well, there's a lot of industries that downplay that. So when I first got into consulting and speaking, I was still in college. I interned for somebody who had a multi-million-dollar company as a trainer and a speaker. And I
Mhm.
was like, that, I want to do that. How are you making money doing that? That was amazing to me. So I got to intern with her. And then she took me to a local chapter of the National Speakers Association meeting. And I got to meet all of these other people who, it's funny now because I was in my late teens and early 20s when this started. And now I'm in my 50s. And most of them were in their 50s at the time. So I was way younger than the average person in there. But they saw me, they saw I was serious, and they took me under their wing and they normalized pricing for me. They
Yes.
normalized charging for me. So in my early 20s, I was putting up 5-figure contracts and 6-figure contracts to companies like Verizon and UPS and Aramark and I was walking into large corporate or organizations and saying, "I'm going to charge you 5 and 6 figures to stand on your platform and speak for an hour." And that was normal to me at the time. Now, coming out of the environment that I lived in, you didn't talk about money. My
Right.
dad worked for Social Security Administration, the government. Like, no one talked about what anybody made, like, so that was refreshing and awesome for me to learn that. So I was doing really, really, really well, shut down from autoimmune, come back around as a practitioner. And when I started charging as a practitioner, I went to organizations that said, these people need your help. They're not well. They're sick. You should help them no matter what the cost. And so you started getting this message and this normalization that we needed to sacrifice ourselves because these people needed our help because it's
Right.
wellness.
Right. Because
So
it's altruistic and don't you want to feel good?
Yes, and that's how we are, and that's who we are, and it's not for the money that we do this, and I started buying into it because it was the normal vibration around me all the time, like, who the
Yeah.
hell did I think I was? I made my money in the old company, but now this one, I'm here for the goodness of the world, and they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
So I used to do there was my first program that I would do for people, I've charged $475 for 30 days of one-on-one coaching, a full meal plan designed just for them, one-on-one meetings, all of this. I'm like, so much work. I worked my butt off for this $475. And then one of my friends from my old life, my speaking and consulting life, showed up and I was also running a restaurant at the time too. He showed up and he said, "What are you charging?" And I told him, and he's for how much? And I told him, and he's like, "What's wrong with you? You're the one who used to coach me around pricing and scheduling." And I said, "Well, altruistic and things, and I should just be this person and sacrifice." And he's like, "I don't know who you are right now." And I was like, wow. So the next person who came into my office, she sat down with me. I did the sales call. And at the end, I'm like, I know I can help her. I know what she needs, what I have, blah, blah, blah. So she said, okay, this is exactly what I've been looking for. How much is this? And I said, it's $6,000. It's a 90-day program. We're going to meet twice a month and I'm going to build out this program for you. And she said, okay, do you take credit cards? So I went from basically almost the same thing. Now I added some time and a few other things, but I basically went from 475 to 6,000,
Yeah.
and she didn't flinch. And now the biggest part of the difference on there too, the people I was charging under $500, they often wouldn't show up for meetings. They weren't as
No skin in the
compliant.
game.
And yes, the woman who showed up and paid 6,000 showed up. She got amazing results. She got them quickly, but she paid for what she paid attention to. Like and it changed my entire thought process on what I was doing to quote help people. And the same thing like the story you were telling in the beginning, it wasn't my job to lower the numbers to make it affordable. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to be mean and we're not price gouging. That's not the conversation. It's she showed up, but showed up differently. So the best pricing model I always tell people is if the person you're working with feels like they're reaching to pay and you feel like you're not giving away something or feeling resentful in the process of the pricing, you've got the perfect price model for you.
I think the interesting thing too is that when you were originally doing the under $500 pricing, you were limiting yourself. And the
Yes.
minute someone almost gave you like the wake up call, the permission, the reminder to not do that, all of a sudden it changes and you probably changed kind of the thought process and the vibration around you, right? And to say like,
Every
hey, okay, you know what? I am worth more than $475 for 30 days and all of this work. And it's my work is important, but my work is not valueless. And it's
right.
okay to put a value on your work and to say, this is what I'm willing to do this for. And just because my work is important doesn't mean I have to give it away for free.
Right. And I also realized I was out of integrity with what I was teaching people because I was sacrificing my own health because I
Yes.
had to take so many clients to make it work. I was exhausted all the time. I was undercutting my own health value as I was trying to teach people. And I was preaching this idea of health and wellness. And I'm
Well, and
like, that is
especially
not
with
a,
that, if you're coming to the table as half a person, then they're not getting what they paid for in the first place. So what dollar amount do you need to show to be able to have the right number of clients so that you can show up 112% for the person who's on the other side of the table?
right. So that's where the balance has to come in. And so many, especially practitioners, but this is people across every industry. We show up in this way where we're giving, giving, giving,
Yeah.
and it's not being appreciated because that person also sees us showing up where we're not on time, or we can't give fully, or we're not processing, or we don't have our
Right.
notes all put together, or we don't remember what it was that we were talking to them about last time because
Right.
we're feeling sideways in our own life. And so again, there's this beautiful balance where you're not price gouging and you're not undercharging. They're reaching because it needs to be just enough where they're reaching enough, where they're showing up. Because I mean, how many $200 programs do you have? I guarantee I do too.
Like a
Have
hundred.
sitting on your,
Yeah.
on your computer right now that you never opened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
went
this.
back one time and I was like, "What even is this?" And I was like, "Oh, well, that was that dumb like $97 change your life course that I bought that one time," and like
Mhm.
all of these things. And And it's really easy to fall into that too, because especially if you're a high performer, and that's typically who we're talking to on these podcasts are,
Yep.
and the listeners are high performers, right? You cannot tell me that I'm not going to be successful and achieve and be a winner and blah, blah, blah. And, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And I've legitimately said that to people before, like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. It's fine. And I've believed it and I've acted it. And it's had an effect on me physically, mentally, emotionally, my business, the people around me. But when you're in the thick of it, it is hard to see that
Mhm.
and to prioritize the things that will help, right? So I think your comment about you have to price it in a way that feels like a reach for them. Because if it doesn't feel like a reach, you're not going to inspire or excite the high performer. By making it a reach, you've made it a challenge. And that is what gets us high performers up in the morning.
Yeah. It's the intentional challenge. It's I'm doing this on purpose, right? It's not the world is crashing me and I'm suffering right now challenge. That's not a challenge. That is something where we're suffering. That's different.
Right.
Choose the challenge, not the suffer. And how do you know the difference? So that's where I also challenge my clients too, because most of my clients are the high performers. Most of them are women. They're the ones who want it to be different, but they don't see another way, but they know there's something else, right? So they're willing to pay for it. And it's this reach, but you don't feel resentful. Cause I've also been in that place too, where I've looked at my calendar and thought, I'm giving so much away right now. And this person doesn't appreciate it. I'm like, oh, okay. That's a me problem.
Yeah.
I need to start looking at that because I've created that within my own business where I am again suffering. But it goes back to the story from when I was 4, where if you can suffer and show daddy how you can walk it off, then look how proud he's going to be. And so much of who we are goes back to how do we make the people around us proud of us, love us, like us, pay attention to us, see us, understand us.
Yeah. So if someone is hearing this and they're seeing themselves in this conversation, what is the number one thing you would have them start doing to explore changing that paradigm for themselves?
Well, first, it's just becoming aware of it. So much of us like celebrate. I used to celebrate this part of who I was, being like, look how much of a, like you were saying, how much of a badass am I? Look at me, queen, right here. But then I started realizing that was just reinforcing this, what I call a positive trauma, where you start to look at what do you celebrate within yourself and where does it come from? Is it internal or is this coming from I need to be seen, I need to be liked, I need to be protected? Is it a transactional thing where you need someone else to see it in order to feel a value? So there's the first piece of it. And then the second piece of it is really looking and understanding who we really are as individuals. Are we doing this because of an outside influence? Are we doing this because it's an internal thing? So it's really becoming aware of. So one of the exercises I have people do when they get stuck in this space is what is it that I'm doing every day to celebrate who I am? And what is it I'm doing every day that gives me a hard time for who I am? So where am I giving myself that hard time where I'm coming at myself? And where am I also celebrating? Because I'm looking for where's the quote negative trauma and where's the positive trauma? What are we reinforcing that isn't serving us? It may have served us to get to this point, but it's not serving us to get to the next level. What got us here won't necessarily get us there. So if you're feeling stuck or you're feeling like you're not getting where you want to go, that's where I start looking at what got us here, but potentially where will that not get us to the next level?
So, Kirsten, thinking of all of the incredible people that that you aspire to know, the thought leaders, the people in our lives who are really helping us do this, who is leading the charge? Who is taking back Monday?
Oh, geez. I think there's a lot of women out there that are starting to take back the charge. And I want to kind of speak to that more as a collective than an individual. Because what I'm seeing is the women who are stepping in as more of that collective energy where we're supporting each other to get to the next rung of the ladder rather than pulling the rungs out so the next level doesn't get up. That's what I'm seeing happen and change now because in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even now in some cases, you see a lot of women who struggled to get where they were going because there were very few opportunities. I mean, hell, my mother, who when I was born, my mother still wasn't allowed to have her own checking account without her husband or her father being on it. She worked for a bank. That
It's
wasn't that
wild.
long ago. Like legit, that was 50 years ago. not hundreds of years ago, 50. Barely 100 years ago did we get the vote.
Right. We
So
had cars when you couldn't have a bank account.
so you're like, so you start looking at how long was this really? So it's not that long, right? But as a collective unit, I think there's more empowered women coming together to support each other without also saying the men are bad. Because I don't think the men are bad.
Right.
Right. So it's not a, oh, we need to get away from them. It's how do we empower each other as a collective unit? Because that's where the first level of brilliance comes in, where we can look at other people and say, how can we also raise you up
Right.
and not just ourselves? So I think I want to speak to that more as a collective than an individual. So
I
I'm
think
seeing more of that language come through, which is beautiful.
I think that's really important too. And as a call to all successful women, like when you have reached it, when you've done it, when you've made it happen, you need to look down and look behind you at the women who are coming and make it twice as easy for them to achieve to your level than you had to do it. Because I am seeing, and I don't know if you're seeing this, but I am seeing some successful women who are kind of taking the attitude of, well, I had to learn to golf and smoke cigars in order to be successful, so
Yes.
therefore you have to too. And I don't think that that is the way that it has to be at all. I think that I can open every door, smooth every path for every woman who comes behind me and not say, well, I did it, so therefore you have to too.
No, but if you watch, there's so much language around women being pitted against each other because there's still
Oh,
this belief
yeah.
there's only a few positions for us to take. If we look at it differently and say, well, rather than say there's only 12 pieces of pie, how about we just make the pie bigger?
Right.
Right. And so we need to make it safe for other women to support each other. And that's still not a message that gets through. And I think we need to, again, collectively do that, not in this weird woo woo girls, yay, but not just the girl empowerment thing. But what I'm also seeing is that girls in sports now, because I was an athlete, I was a gymnast, I was actually a decent ball player, even though I got hit in the face at 4. I was really an athlete, but now there's this collective athlete where we're celebrating women in athletics,
Yeah.
which is a collective team thing that we did not see with women before because they just weren't in sports, not the way we are now. So I think that's also what's changing the story. So I celebrate all of the athletes as well.
I'm in Iowa, so we love Caitlin Clark here because she's our homegirl. But it is exciting and it is almost transformative to see the change. Like my husband grew up a Lakers fan. He was like a big Kobe Bryant fan. We watched a lot of men's sports, and now he watches Fever games and like Valkyries games and women's basketball. And not because anyone wants to. He pulls up his phone. He's watching it at night, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm watching the Fever game." And I'm like, I mean, cool, but me, when I married you 20 years ago, would have never thought you would be watching a women's sports game because it's just not something that we did growing up.
No, but they're also it's because a lot of it's now being normalized. Again, back to what's normal. What do we see as okay? It's being normalized now for men to watch women's sports. It's not just, oh, the women on the side at 2 o'clock in the morning getting to watch the sports. So I think that's also changing the story as we get older. So I love seeing my nieces and nephews and my friends' kids, the girls get into sports as well as the boys. And we're starting to normalize the conversation across the board, not just from a gender perspective, but just a human perspective.
I love that. Kirsten, if someone is really connecting with you, if they want to follow along, if they want to learn more, if they want to reach out, where can they find you online?
LinkedIn and my website are the best places. I'm not a dance on TikTok kind of girl. So LinkedIn, go find me there, or go to evolveminded.com. And I have great free giveaways and things there in the story. And you can get on my email list and learn more.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking back Monday with me.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Taking Back Monday, where we say goodbye to the Sunday scaries and hello to meaningful and fulfilling work. If you enjoyed today's episode, let's connect on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you found value here, share the podcast with your network. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us inspire more leaders to join the movement. Until next time, let's take back Monday.